Any one of us can be victimized by someone who's a manipulator, but most often than not, they seek out their prey. We have to talk about patterns then, right? Like if a person is gaslighting you, if a person is trying to isolate you or not take accountability or lying chronically, all of those are toxic qualities. Many times when people are being manipulated, they can transition into feeling like they're the ones to blame, but their behavior is never your fault. Most often, they're trying some sort of tactic to get you under their control, and they're usually relentless. And so it's gonna be really critical, for you to...
You've left me speechless with that one, girl.
Dr. Mariel Buque.
Mariel Buque.
Mariel Buque.
Licensed trauma psychologist and Columbia University professor.
I've had an experience where I was engaged, and during my entire engagement, I broke out in hives. My entire body was saying, no, this is not the one. And as soon as I took off my engagement ring, the hives went away.
Oh, so you didn't realize that was the reason?
No, but I knew that this person made me feel uneasy. I wish I had that insight, that wisdom that I hold now to say, no way.
We may have people in our lives that can be toxic, whether that's a romantic partner or someone that we work with or a family member or even just a friend. And so what I want to know is, what are the tactics manipulators use in order to take our power away? And what are the things that we can do to really stand up for ourselves?
Manipulation can be hoovering. So whenever a person is feeling like you're not at their grasp, they try to hoover you back in. And hoover, like the vacuum, it means that they're trying to suck you back into their lives in order to actually like get you back into the flow of their manipulation. So hoovering is a big one. Breadcrumbing is another one. And what that is a person actually like leaving little messages or little, gifts or anything that can actually like get you to actually connect with them and say, oh, hey, I got your flowers, right? And so all of a sudden now you're in their grasp again, and they can either, give you like some love, or they can like distance themselves away. And usually they do both, because the breadcrumbing is really just to get you there, and then they can do whatever it is that they desire to do, and typically it looks like that.
So what happens in those moments when you're feeling that maybe they're breadcrumbing you, but let's say they'd sent you flowers and then they're just really busy?
Yes.
So it's like, I want to make sure that when we talk about these sorts of things, that we can kind of see both sides of it. Whereas like you may have someone that is actually very busy, but they still really like you. They didn't really mean to do whatever that made you guys split up, or, whatever the circumstances is. And so they do the things, but they're not able to be with you all the time and be totally attentive. How do you differentiate the two? And then if you do then realize it is breadcrumbing, how do you address it?
Well, we have to talk about patterns then, right? Like if a person just does one thing and you've never seen them do that ever, right? Like it's not necessarily that they're breadcrumbing or they're hoovering or they may be gaslighting, right? But not really aware, but it may not be like a personality trait of theirs or like a way in which they engage in relationships with you. And they may not be trying to manipulate you. Many times, whenever we're talking about manipulation strategies, the person that is the manipulator is engaging in these strategies on an ongoing basis. Like most often, they're actually trying some sort of tactic to get you under their control, and they're usually relentless. So you'll be able to notice whenever that's happening versus somebody is like incredibly busy and just didn't have the time to follow up. So it becomes pretty evident, and I think most people also really feel it in their gut, like this person does not feel good to me. Many of us don't know how to tune into that gut feeling, and so we oftentimes ignore it, and we try to give people the benefit of the doubt, a second chance, right? But if you see that a person is continuously engaging in these tactics, then you have to see it for what it is.
And so when you see it for what it is, how do you respond? Do you address it, or do you suggest just walking away?
I suggest addressing it first, because you're there for a reason. Like you may be attracted to that person, or this may be like a colleague or a business partner that you really appreciate, right? Like there may be a relationship that's already there that's formed around something else, right? And so addressing it and seeing how that person responds is always like that first go-to that we should all do, right? Like do give them the benefit of the doubt. But if you see that there's a pattern, address the fact that there's a pattern and that you're hoping that they could help you to see changed behavior and not offer you empty promises. Give them a grace period in which they can actually engage in that changed behavior. And if it doesn't happen in that time, then you have a decision to make. Do I leave or do I stay?
Yeah. Okay. And so what's another tactic?
Some of the major manipulation tactics are obviously gaslighting, which is, for anybody who isn't familiar, just the ways in which somebody might actually manipulate the truth and make us feel as though our rendition of an event is not real. And so typically, whenever they feel like they need to control us or gain power over us or not necessarily like allow us to live in our truth, they start questioning our rendition of the event or what happened. If somebody says, well, you know, I did take out the trash, like, are you crazy? Are you not realizing like that I'm actually doing the things that you're telling me? And so if somebody says that to me, I'll think like, wait, did they take out the trash? Like, did I not remember? So now I'm questioning myself and I'm confused and I'm wondering if what I believe to be true is actually true or if it's something that I made up. And typically the follow-up is you're just making it up or you don't know what happened, right? And so that's the way in which a person tries to like gnaw at your rendition of the events and your perception of reality. And it makes you question how you're perceiving your own life. It's incredibly disempowering. And it can happen with the slightest, tiniest thing, like what I mentioned, or it can happen with like bigger things. And the am I going crazy is like that very first cue for any of us to understand, like, wait, this person is actually making me feel like I'm going crazy. Like people can't make you anything, but when it comes to gaslighting, I really do believe people can push you over the edge and really make you feel like you are not really in the same reality that they're in. And truly you're not, right? Another thing that people start to internalize as far as like, you know, the types of questions that come up are, did what happened actually happen? And that's really tricky because now like you actually lived that experience. You were there. You didn't see the garbage being taken out. You didn't see that person actually turn in that project. You know, like you know the truth of what happened, but now you're questioning the validity of your own truth. And that can be really tricky. Another thing that can happen is that a person can start wondering if they themselves are a bad person. And I think that that's when it gets into really like treacherous waters, right? Like when you start wondering if you yourself are someone of worth and value, then we have to really start getting you out of whatever connection you have with that person that is actually making you question your own worth. It can get really bad whenever we're like entangled with anybody or in a situation with someone where gaslighting happens frequently. And that I think is one of the biggest consequences of continuous manipulation and gaslighting tactics for us to lose ourselves in it.
I think about as you were talking, like especially in relationships, because you said something where it's like we start to think like maybe it's not them, it's me. But I think maybe even the worst thing is where you don't even realize or even recognize that it could be them. You just go immediately inwards. And if you're in a relationship, let's say you don't trust your partner or you're seeing signs that maybe you don't trust them. And now your partner turns around to you and they say, why are you being so jealous? You're insecure. I'm not doing anything wrong. In those moments do you start to piece apart what is true, what is actually fact, what isn't true? And then how do you start to respond to things like that?
Well, you have to first take a step back, right? Like, and this is mentally and even physically, if that helps. But you have to actually like question whether or not you are indeed realizing what is happening, right? Like, am I like being warped into some like vicious cycle here, or is this something that, you know, I need to interact with? Like, you have to wonder about that. So in a moment like that, like it's going to be really helpful for you to be able to say, is my rendition of what happened real? Do I really trust this person? Do I really feel comfortable here? Do I believe that they're like cheating on me? Or is this something that is just fear-based? Am I just like leaning into my fear? So you have to start questioning that. But if a person is, you know, telling you that, it can be helpful to just say, no, actually, that's not how I remember the event. I actually remember it very differently. and this is how I'm experiencing you right now. And for you to really take that step back and acknowledge what is happening. And then when you come back and you say what you need to say, it's with a firm tone. You got to think about what's happening in that moment. Like, you're being controlled, you're being taken into a cycle where that person has power over you. So if that's the case, then you're being, like your entire being is feeling weakened and debilitated. And so if that's the case, you're not going to have the confidence and the power to actually stand up for yourself, which is why it's so important also to actually catch these things early on. Because when we're in these cycles for an extended period of time and you're like in it with a person for years, it can get really hard to really get your bearings and like get your power back. It's not impossible, but it can be really, really hard because you're already like in that very profound and continuous and chronic disempowered state. So part of the reason why it's so hard for us to talk is because of that.
So I love the doing it early, and I think your idea of, well, that is actually not how I remember it. I think that's easier to say earlier on in a relationship. But when you've been really enmeshed and you've been together for a long time and they've been gaslighting you for, let's say, years and years and years, if you just come all of a sudden and be like, that isn't how it happened. Like, I can see that could, especially if you're with someone that's very toxic, that can actually be more turbulent, or am I mistaken? And then, so how would you then handle it if you've been in that relationship for a while? What are the first steps? Because I'm assuming people don't speak up because they don't have the confidence yet to do so.
Right.
So what do those steps look like in order to speak up, address the gaslighting, and then ideally, I don't want to say leave, but ideally either fix the problem or know that it's not you, it's them?
Well, it's never you. Like, I think that that's something that's really important for us to like just highlight, because many times when people are being manipulated, that's something that can happen where they can transition into feeling like they're the ones that are at fault, they're the ones to blame, they're the ones causing all the issues. Many times what they hear people saying or what they hear the other person saying is, you're being so dramatic, you're being sensitive. So they start internalizing that idea of themselves. Well, I'm dramatic, I'm sensitive, right? Like, and so it can get really tricky. So what we need to do in that moment is like re-find ourselves, right? Like, any person that is already in that entanglement for an extended period of time needs to find their way into their authentic self again. And when they find themselves and they know their own truth, it's going to be a lot easier to express that truth. Many times we can't do it in the very same places that are toxic, in the very same relationships that are toxic. Many times it's not going to be possible because that person is not going to be able to actually take accountability and say, you know what? Yeah, I've actually made a mistake. It's actually my fault. We may never hear that. We may never actually get any kind of, I'm sorry, any kind of validation for our experiences. And so what we need to do is move on and then find ourselves, yet again. But if anybody wants to do that in the relationship, it is possible. It's possible through, self-reflection, through journaling, through, really being more attuned with yourself and like going into your body and thinking like, what am I feeling right now? Like, how is my body taking in this person? Like, does this person feel safe to me? Does this person feel like, he builds, or she or they build a lot of tension within me? And if that is the case, then my body is probably signaling to me that this person is toxic for me, because my body is literally feeling like there's a toxin inside of me. And so in that moment, it can be helpful to just reflect upon like how you feel around that person and how you desire to feel, how you want to, engage in your relationships. Is it in the ways that you're seeing with this person, or would you rather something that's a lot healthier?
And if it's someone like a parent or something, because it's going to be harder, I assume, right? Like, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you have hopefully the choice to be able to leave. But when it's family, I think it makes it even harder. And so you end up at like a Christmas time or Thanksgiving, and now you're in their presence. They're potentially gaslighting you. How do you suggest to still do the exact process that you broke down?
Well, whenever we have people in our lives that we understand we cannot change, the goal is to change ourselves. The goal is to actually transition into a person that can actually feel more settled around the very same people. Like some of us still want to be in these families. We still want to engage with family members that actually have toxic qualities, but we love them still, or we still want to go to, holiday dinner and like be able to like partake in the holidays, right? But if we're going into those spaces with the same mindset, going into those spaces, actually continuing to do the very same things that we used to do, like if they yell at us, we yell back, then you're just keeping the cycle going, right? Like you're not actually like disrupting and like breaking yourself away from it. So in those moments, the best thing that we can do is actually help ourselves to remain calm so that we don't feed into that, because feeding into it is only going to leave us more hurt in the end.
Yeah, so true. So talking about feeding into it, I want to get like a little practical. Let's go down the rabbit hole of assuming that you're with somebody and they're acting in a way that you feel like is a little suspicious, right? So maybe they're texting somebody, maybe they've been, and you start to address it. And going back to what you said earlier about how they're going to be like, well, you're being dramatic. So in that moment, when someone, maybe you're not being dramatic at all and you're just pinpointing, hey, maybe you shouldn't be texting that person. And they call you dramatic. You assess and you're like, well, no, I'm not dramatic. And so you address it to them like, no, actually, I don't think I'm dramatic. I think that this was inappropriate. So then they say, oh, well, look, see, you're being emotional. So now that you weren't dramatic, you weren't emotional, but in their manipulation tactic, they've now gotten you to be dramatic and emotional. How do you keep calm in those situations? And then how do you address it in the moment? Or do you think you should just walk away?
Well, one thing that you can be mindful of is the fact that in that moment, what's happening is a character assassination. So right now, like this person is trying to assassinate your character, make it look like you are just like the worst of the worst, and make you believe the same about yourself. And so whenever we can see what is happening for what it is, we can make a decision to step away and not engage. In moments like that, when a person already believes all of these things about you and they're trying to feed it to you, there is very little that you can do in that moment to change that person's mind, because they themselves are trying to change your mind about who you are. And so the best thing to do in those moments is to really not engage. Now, if you want to re-engage at another point in time and address the situation and tell them, this is something that makes me feel uneasy, makes me feel uncomfortable, makes me feel unloved, then you can re-engage in the conversation later on. But in that moment right now where this person is dead set on making you feel like you are an awful person, there's not going to be a lot of productive conversation that's going to be had in that moment.
Yeah, and I think to your point, if you go back and then you sit with them and you say, this isn't making me feel good, like you break it down, I think that's also a great opportunity to see how they respond. Because if they turn around and they say, oh my God, I didn't realize, I didn't mean to make you feel like that, then maybe you go, oh, maybe it's not gaslighting and we just had like an argument and we were like, like talking past each other. Versus if they're like, what are you talking about? I think that then becomes almost another identifying point that, yes, they are gaslighting you because they won't even acknowledge your own emotions.
Yeah. And, I love that you're like being really balanced about like this perspective, because there are moments when people actually don't realize that they can be really toxic in their own attempts to defend themselves. And this can be an opportunity for you to say, whenever you're in disagreement with me, to attack my character isn't actually going to be productive. So why don't we try another route? What is something else that we can do? What works well for both of us? And if walking away for the moment works well so that we can regroup and have a conversation in the ways that we're having it now, that feels loving, productive, and like it's actually enlightening and insightful about our relationship, then let's do that.
Can you explain a little what you mean about how we respond in a toxic way?
Well, toxicity can be, it's very variable, but like when we're talking about toxicity, we're kind of always talking about if a person is gaslighting you, if a person is trying to isolate you or not take accountability or lying chronically. All of those are toxic qualities. And if they're also like giving you empty threats, like if they're telling you, oh yeah, I'm going to change, but just so that you can be quiet and like not, press them anymore about an issue. Like all of those and a million others are toxic qualities or toxic behaviors, right? But the thing to notice about any toxic qualities is really how they're making you feel. Typically, when a person is, feeling like someone else isn't taking accountability, they feel awful. So your body and your mind are giving you cues as to, how you're interpreting this person. And it's really helpful to always tune in and get a sense of, okay, so what's really happening here? I don't feel safe. I don't feel good around this person. I don't feel loved. This isn't love, right? Like this is a toxic relationship. And I probably need to either address it or get out of it. Another is lying chronically and not really being truthful about the things that are happening around you. Like lying is the prototype of a lot of manipulators. And in part, some of them do believe their own lies. And so they will fight tooth and nail with you just to help you to see like their rendition of the events. So whenever you see that there are things that aren't adding up, it's important for you to say, okay, like this person is not being truthful most of the time. Again, patterns, right? And so I have to make a decision here. Like, is this somebody that I want to continue connecting with, even though I know that they have this propensity and can't be truthful, which means that I don't trust them anymore, which means that I have to wonder at any given point if they're lying to me. Again, there's a decision. So you're like kind of at a crossroads. Like, do I want to engage or do I not? And for many of us who come from backgrounds and from witnessing people in our families, parents even, who had those very same dynamics, and maybe there was a parent who was a chronic liar and it just felt like the norm, sometimes we become very permissive with folks in our lives around their own lives. And so it can be really tricky to really distance ourselves from that and no longer be in relationships that actually have that quality and that can hurt us in that way.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. And then how do we make sure that we don't then slip into being a liar ourselves? Because if you're with somebody, let's say, and you keep forgiving them, you keep like, oh, maybe they'll change, and you really hope, I've heard you talk about how you can start to adopt that person's toxic behavior in order as like a protection mechanism.
Yeah.
And so especially when it comes to lying, you're like, well, they lie. Why is it, I'm going to lie too. What does it matter? And so to talk to me about why we do that, and then obviously the downside and why that isn't a wise strategy.
We see that it's effective, right? Like we see the impact that it has on us, right? We believe the empty lies and the empty, like promises. Like we see that there's somebody that is actually like telling us that they're going to do something but not doing it, but we keep forgiving them. So we're like, okay, well, it works. Subconsciously, of course, right? And so we start like developing a lot of those qualities when we're around somebody that does that on a continuous basis. But we have to understand the why, right? Why are we engaging in behaviors that don't coincide with our values? Because we see that those behaviors lead to having greater control and power over someone. And if we feel disempowered, we're going to do whatever it is that we can to gain more of that power, to get our power back, but do it in a way that feels effective. But it never really leads us down the path of feeling good about ourselves. Like whenever we're in a process where we are not connected to our own values, if our values is to be authentic and truthful, then we're going to start experiencing shame, guilt, and a lot of other emotions that are going to start spiraling. And then that's just going to lead you down a path that you didn't anticipate but won't be healthy for you.
So you think that you're doing it to gain your power, but ultimately down the road, you actually are disempowered.
Exactly. Wow. It's a great way of saying that.
And you said something earlier about the empty threats.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking back to my relationship before Tom, my husband, and he always used to threaten to leave me and abandon me, and he knew that that was like a wound, and so I would, do anything I could to possibly keep him, but I saw that it worked, to your point. And so whenever I saw him in a vulnerable moment, but also being dismissive, I would use that as a retaliatory method. And in the moment, it made me feel powerful. But again, to your point, it doesn't long term. But talk to me about that as a manipulation tactic.
Yeah, like the thing about manipulators is that they're going to ask you questions, or they're going to inquire or be very attentive to the vulnerabilities that you have. So if a vulnerability is an abandonment wound, then that's going to be a really, really powerful tactic that they're going to be able to use to actually get you to do what they want. And so you have to be very mindful of how you're sharing or what you're sharing with individuals that is reflective of deep wounds, or is reflective of the soft, tender spots of your heart, right? Because they can very much use that to their advantage. And it's one of the tactics of manipulation is to actually, get you to do something based on whatever feels like most disempowering to you. And so, like, to that effect, you wind up doing whatever it is that they desire, which reinforces the fact that they can do something or say something or pose an empty threat, and then you actually, do whatever it is that they desire you to do, which maximizes the possibility of them doing it over again. And so what's happening right then is that their empty threats are being reinforced, and they're more likely to actually do it again.
I actually remember when it got to the point where he was just doing it to me so often that eventually I was like, well, go on then, fine, leave. And then he did leave, and I was like, oh crap, that didn't work. Right. So I actually, in hindsight, I think was trying to manipulate him in order to stay. Call him, I'm going to call him on this threat next time. And then it didn't actually work. And so that very smartly on his part put me back into being more of, submissive, and then obviously staying in that relationship.
Yeah. And so the strategy was effective, right? And so,
unfortunately.
Yeah. And that happens to a lot of us, right? Like, we wind up staying in these relationships for an extended period of time because the actual strategy is something that we're not aware of is happening. But whenever we are aware of it, and whenever we can say, wait, that's gaslighting, or you're hoovering me back in, then we have an opportunity to actually say, you know what, I'm not playing into that. I'm going to take my power back, and what you're saying and what you're doing and what you're not doing is not working for me. I'm going to decide to extract myself from this relationship and live a life that doesn't have this toxic element in it.
I love that even what you're not doing part as well. That's so true. Talk to me about how they will also use controlling as a big method, and manipulating you into not seeing your friends, not seeing your family, and that being a piece of a control.
Yeah, well, it's an isolation tactic. So if they can actually cut off the source of power for you in all directions, then they have power over you, right? Like, they can actually control you even easier. If you have friends around, your friends are probably going to say, you know what, I don't really like this person, or I don't like how they're treating you. So they're going to, in their eyes, they're going to brainwash you. And they're going to make you realize that this person's mistreating you. So if they cut off that source, then they have better control over you. If they cut off the source of your family members, and you no longer can go to your family members and say, I'm not feeling well, can someone take care of me? Can someone love upon me? And this is the only person now that you have that can actually give you that source of love, then, I mean, it's strategic, right? Like, if they cut off your finances and they have control over your finances, you're going to financially depend on them. So in all areas of your life, they're cutting off the source, and they're making themselves the only source. And that's how they gain absolute power over you.
And I assume that doesn't happen overnight, right? It's not like you're kind of dating someone or with someone, you really like them, and all of a sudden they're like, no, you shouldn't see your friends. Like, how does that actually play out? Because I think it becomes the dripping effect that eventually becomes the torture.
Well, it starts off with really seemingly benign statements like, I don't really like her too much, right? that friend, and then it becomes like, you know what, she's actually like somebody who I don't want around you. And then it turns into, it's either her or me, right? And so it escalates. And the same goes with like money. You know what? We should have a joint bank account. We should probably share our finances. How much do you make? You know what? You should probably pay a little bit more of the bills. You should probably give me your whole entire paycheck and I'll disperse it evenly. Don't worry, I'll give you what you need for shopping, right? And so all of a sudden, like they have full control over your finances. So it becomes like something that's obviously like massive, but it starts off with little things that you don't really realize could actually like spiral up.
And how much of that is all deliberate and pre-planned, or is it in stages where people will see an opportunity, they'll use that as like, you know, remember when your friend said that? That wasn't very nice. They weren't a good friend to you. Like, and then they realize the power and then they double down.
People that are manipulators tend to know how much tact and power they have over the people that they are trying to gain power over, the people that they're trying to control. So they typically have some sort of an understanding of the fact that they can actually get this person to do every little thing that they desire them to do. And unfortunately, a lot of people who have this manipulative like air in their personality, like they know who to pick. They strategize around the people that they select. Usually people that probably are really like gentle and tender and kind, right? And they can be easy targets, although that's not everyone, right? Like any one of us can be victimized by someone who's a manipulator, but most often than not, they seek out their prey. They seek out the people that they know they can manipulate and subdue.
So yeah, so you mentioned, I was going to ask what are the characteristics of somebody that typically falls for manipulation more. And so you said people that are kind, gentle, what else? And then why is that?
People that have people-pleasing qualities, that like to appease, people that tend to like to care for others, like to be of service, like because you would want to care for this person, right? And whatever it is that they desire or they need, you want to care to their needs. But that's literally what they also want you to do. They want to control you so that you can take care of them and take care of their needs and take care of their feelings and take care of everything, you know, that they desire of you. And so it's, you know, those qualities, it's going to be really essential for anybody that holds those qualities to also have really firm boundaries. Because when you have the knowledge and the boundaries, they're incredible armors against being manipulated in this way.
Oh, we're definitely going to go down boundaries in a bit, girl, because that's, you know, the one, I think, a big step into being able to then protect yourself from everything that we're saying. But before we do, talk to me about the way that people will use their emotions to control you.
Well, you know, people might cry and there would be like crocodile tears, right? Like just to get you to feel bad for them. And when you feel bad, especially if you're one of those tenderhearted people, you know, you feel bad. So then you're like, okay, well, let me appease them. What is it that you need? I'm sorry, right? And as soon as you say those things, like they know they've got you in their grasp. And so it's going to be really critical, you know, for you to be mindful of whether or not like the emotion is genuine and authentic. So crying is, you know, one way in which they try to elicit like some sort of a, you know, a response from you. They may even say like, you are making me feel, right? So whenever they say anything like that, you're making me feel angry. Like we don't make anyone feel anything. We may contribute to their lives in a way that produces a feeling, right? But we're not we're not like switching off like the anger switch inside of them, right? And so it's going to be really important for us to also be mindful of when people say stuff like that, like you're making me. And so, you know, when it comes to feeling, it's either the expression of feeling in that way, expression, crying, like you visibly see them expressing feeling, or them mentioning that you are the contributing person to their feeling state.
I'm going to be honest with you. I've said that a lot to my husband, and in all of my journey, having you know amazing women like yourself on the show, I catch myself now. But I do, it like became an instinct where I was like, well, you're making me feel sad. You're making me feel, you know, vulnerable. You're making me feel unwanted, whatever. And after having realized that I said it, it was like literally almost like an automatic thing that I would say, and then realizing that isn't exactly what I mean. But how do you know then, in the sense of it being a manipulative tactic, or it being someone like me who just uses it as a vocabulary, but doesn't actually mean it in a manipulative way?
Well, you know, the key is like whether or not this person is trying to actually get you to change your behavior in order to meet their needs, right? Like if you're telling your husband, like you're saying, you're making me feel a certain way, not knowing to use other language, it is so that you can express to him that you have a feeling that you're hoping that he can hold with you, right? And so, you know, being able to say that, being able to say, there's a feeling here. I know that something that you said triggered it. And now I'm here in this feeling, and I want you to know that, know how I'm interpreting this moment with you. Hold it with me. Like, that's a very different experience than you made me angry, it's your fault, right? It's very different.
And in that way where someone's saying you make me angry, it's your fault, it's a way of blaming you so that you change your behavior to then not question them.
Exactly, so that they don't then have to assume any accountability for their behavior. They're actually exempt from it. So now, like, if I tell you, you're making me angry, it's your fault, and you're like, you know what, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right, it's my fault, I won't do it again, then I don't have to change anything about myself. I just changed you.
Yeah, that's so true. Because as you were saying, I was like, no, I do say it to my husband because I do want him to change his behavior. Like, that's very true. But I don't want it to be a blame game versus what you said. It's like, I need you to hear me of how I'm feeling, and then how can you hold that space? I think that's a beautiful way of rethinking about it. Have you been in a situation where you found yourself doing that same thing? Either not meaning to, like, oh, okay, I've said this and realized this was actually a manipulation tactic that I didn't mean to use.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, especially earlier in my 20s, and I'm sure that I probably have said it like recently without realizing, although I tend to be or try to be very intentional about my words and my language. But in my 20s, I was pointing fingers in the other direction, like through and through, like every single day. And it was because I wasn't taking accountability for my own emotions and even like soothing my own emotions. It was like just waiting for the other person to say whatever it is that they needed to say so that I could feel better. And that's a real recipe for codependency too. And I've definitely been there, and it's not healthy. And to be honest, it doesn't feel good to me either. Even though I am the one that's pointing the finger and saying, you made me feel this way, I didn't feel good about that. I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to hold on to my own emotion in a way that made me feel empowered and like I had at least some sort of control over how I felt. But I didn't know, like I actually didn't have the language to say, no, you have some control over how you feel. You have control over how you choose to feel in this moment. I didn't have that language. And I also didn't have what we call like I statements. I feel, or I am feeling this way because of something you said, rather than you are making me feel this way. So before I had the language, I definitely pointed fingers. I was definitely in that cycle, and it didn't feel good. And I just knew, like intuitively in my gut, I knew like this isn't the way. And I don't want to live a life like this. Like I don't want my friendships to reflect this. I don't want my relationships to be this way. I don't want to be in connection with people in my workplace environments that feel this way. It just is a bad recipe, and it would spiral me always. And so now that I have the language, I can catch myself more, and I give myself grace and compassion for the moments when I slip, because we all do.
Yeah, I love that you're able to do that. I found myself fluctuating because I'd had that past relationship, and so I thought I'm never going to use this manipulation tactics that I saw in my ex, and so I was so aware of it that when I got with my husband, I wouldn't cry in front of him. Because I thought, because my husband's a big ball of mush when he's around me, so I knew that if I cried, it would break his heart. And in breaking his heart, I never wanted him to apologize for something that he actually didn't mean to apologize for, because he wasn't actually sorry. And so I went a bit like too hard in the opposite direction, where every time I felt like a tear, I would like turn around and I'd walk out, and he'd be like, why do you always hide when you're crying? And I told him, I was like, I never want to influence you over this argument, especially if it was in an argument situation. I was like, I never want to use tears as an influence on you to act in a different way that you wouldn't normally act if I wasn't crying. But talk to me about the gut instinct. You talk about this so much in the book and everything that you do. Why is that important? Why do women ignore their gut intuition? And how do we start to tap into it more so that we can start to identify all these things that we're talking about? Because I think it's our superpower that if we can use that with the knowledge that you're teaching everyone today, we'd be unstoppable.
We would be. And you know what? A part of the reason why we aren't connected to our gut feeling is because we've never been taught to. Like, you weren't in health class in school and someone, no one told us, like, you know what? You have a gut feeling. It's connected to your nervous system. And your nervous system alerts you to when there is threat in your environment and someone can actually hurt you. It's an evolutionary response. It's one that's there to protect you, and you can use it. It can be a part of your power. You can use it to actually scan your environment in a way that helps you to experience your environment in a safer way. And it can also help you to form connections with others in a healthy way. But we're never taught that, which is such a disservice to all of us. But our gut feeling is really the feeling of our nervous system, because our nervous system is connected to our gut. And there's so many also neurotransmitters that are reflected inside of our guts. And those neurotransmitters are also there telling us, hey, this feels good, this doesn't feel good. And so when we can actually tune into our bodies, we're able to see that our bodies are already taking in the environment well before we actually are taking it in consciously. And if we're able to see by tuning in that our body isn't feeling comfortable around certain people or safe or in a state of love or connection, then we can actually make a determination as to whether or not we're going to listen to our bodies or if we're going to, just kind of stay in denial.
So how do we tune in? What is that first step? Because assuming that you have to unwire so many years of not tuning in, or ignoring it.
Yeah. And, tuning in, it is a practice, but it just starts with sitting in silence. How many of us actually do that? How many of us not sit in silence and maybe scroll through our phones, but really sit in silence and look at the room that we're in and be present and mindful and connect to how we're feeling and any of the sensations that we feel inside of our bodies? It literally takes us 30 seconds to 60 seconds to just offer ourselves a tune in. It's not something that needs to be elaborate. It's just something that we can do for a few seconds a day. And it can be a really good practice to help us to get into the flow of understanding our bodies better. So it's as simple as that. I mean, it can be more elaborate in that we can sit and meditate for, 20 minutes and have real body attunement and do body scans and, maybe do some muscle relaxation, practices with it. And then there's a lot more that, we can probably tap into as far as our body knowledge. But really all it takes is just a 30-second moment to just pause and reflect and think, what do I feel?
So when you write down, what do I feel? And you're like, oh, my gut feels like it's in a knot. How do you then take that into action with everything that we're talking about, with identifying what in your life is giving you that knot?
Well, you know what? I dated someone with whom I felt like I could never go to the bathroom. My stomach was frozen. And I was like, why is it that I, usually when I would get home, I would actually be like, oh, okay, I need to use the bathroom, but never around this person because my stomach was always in knots. Yes.
As in a bowel movement?
Yes, I couldn't and so my stomach was telling me you're too tense around this person. They don't feel good to you. They make you feel unsafe. And so I had to tune into my body and say my body is literally saying, I'm home, I'm safe. I can now use the bathroom. And it's literally in things like that. I also had an experience where, I mentioned this to you previously, where I was engaged, and during my entire engagement, I broke out in hives. And my entire body was saying, no, this is not the one. This is not the person for you. And as soon as I took off my engagement ring, the hives went away. Mind you, I went to so many different specialists about these hives and trying to get answers about why is my body responding this way. It was responding to the person that was closest to you.
All right, so take me through that, because I remember you telling me the story, but we never really went deep. So, because to your point, you got hives, you're like, oh, it must be cream that I'm using, it must be the air, I must have allergies. How on earth did you then realize it ended up being because of your engagement?
I realized that when I took the ring off and I gave it to him, and then the next day I literally...
Oh, so you didn't realize that was the reason?
No, but I knew that this person made me feel uneasy. Like I felt overwhelmed every time I was around him. However, like I made the decision not knowing that the hives were connected. But when I took the ring off, I was like, this is mind-blowing. Like our bodies respond to people. They respond to our environments. And my body was literally telling me, like, you are unwell. There is a toxic element of this relationship that's literally manifesting in your body. You need to let it go.
Wow. And did it start when you got engaged? And I'm not sure how comfortable you are talking about it. Was he a toxic person? Or?
Absolutely. He was actually someone that when I actually went into my doctoral journey in grad school, when we started going through the diagnostic manual of narcissism, I was like, no way. No way. I actually talk to my sister about this all the time. Like, I'm like, I couldn't believe that I didn't have that knowledge. Like, I feel like everyone should know what narcissism looks like, what manipulation looks like, the ways that these people like hoover into your life, how they suck you into cycles. We should all feel some sort of protection from these kinds of experiences and relationships. I had no idea. And this person was in my life for years. So they basically like believe themselves to be like above everyone else. And he would always like talk down to people, talk bad about people. And then that quickly turned into talking bad about me or talking down to me, right? Because it's like anybody who can be a target, right? He would often like use any kind of power that he had, including like, for example, like he had like a lot of money and he would use that money power in order to almost kind of like manipulate the people around him. Like, for example, he would give money to his mother who was more elderly, but whenever she wouldn't do something that he would want, he would actually take the money away. And so he would utilize the power that he had to inflict pain or to withdraw love. I mean, it was just like, he did so many things. It was, to me, it felt like when I realized that all of these things were a part of this characteristic of narcissism, I was like, I wish to never go back into something like this. I must know this through and through and equip myself with how this can show up in my life, know the signs, and make sure that I am protected, but that I also help other women to protect themselves, because it can leave a lot of like deep, deep wounds that you have to fix for a long time. It took me years to actually get out of the fog of that relationship, and that's the case for a lot of us.
Once you left, it took you years?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that why you believe naming things is so important? Because was it in naming that he was a narcissist that allowed you to, the light bulb go off for you to then leave him?
Well, I wish that I would have had the word gaslighting. I was gaslit so much in that relationship. Had I known, had I actually had the power to say, that's gaslighting. My version of the events is not your version of the events. And you know what? That's okay. But instead, I was like, am I making this up? Is this like really what happened? Well, he says I'm, you know, I'm always like in la la land and I don't really like take notice of what's happening around me. Like, is that really how I am? Is that my true self? Is he seeing my true self, or do I know my true self, right? Like, it's in all of those things. Now I know not to, you know, I can really spot the signs, right? Like, and I guess it really helps that I'm a psychologist too, but just for my own sake, I can understand how a person is trying to get to a place where they're berating me in that way or gaslighting me or trying to, you know, manipulate me in any way, and I can actually protect myself. And that's what I want for a lot of women. I want that for all of us. I don't want us to have to suffer in this way from people who haven't done the work to actually carve out their own wounds and then inflict the wounds upon us.
Yeah, God. And your work is so beautiful, and the value you bring is just profound.
Thank you.
I'd love to know, if you don't mind again, sharing, how did you end up leaving him? What were the things that you said to him? Because a lot of my audience have had either toxic or narcissistic relationships, and they have just, it has broken them to their core. And some people are still in that and they don't know how to leave.
Yeah, you know, having a community around you that can actually help you to transition from these relationships is critical. More often than not, we think we are going to leave the relationships just on our own. And typically, you know, with people that feel like their power is being taken away, they can get violent. And it's going to be really important for you to have people around you that can keep you safe, but also help you to feel connected and loved in the ways that this person did not. That's some of what I did. So I actually got my family together, and I actually like relayed the message with my family because I didn't want this person to become violent or to, you know, lash out at me, because I could see he had some of those tendencies. And so I rallied up my community and I said, you know, this isn't working for me. I don't want you in my life, and this engagement is over. And I was able to part, but with community with me. I think that's really critical and important.
And so you did it with your family there?
Yeah, I did. And another thing that I intuitively did, which and I know a lot of psychologists also recommend this too, which is really important to do, is to keep record of things. I actually kept a record of like giving the ring back, and I, you know, and like things that I knew that he was going to try and come after me for. And so I was like, you know, he's someone that has the tendency to say, you never gave me the ring back, you owe me money. And so I didn't want that to be the case. So I actually like recorded the entire process. And, you know, and it's really, it's sad that we have to go to such great lengths to protect ourselves, but it's more important to feel safe and protected than to feel like, you know, this person could actually violate you yet again. So I always think, you know, like keep record, whether it's written record of what transacted, what you did, how you parted ways, if you live with the person, how you know, divvied up like furniture, or how you like, you know, took them off the lease and things like that. And then also to have community around you to really help you to feel safe and protected.
You said that it took you 2 years, basically 2 years, to kind of come out of that fog. What did that 2 years look like in that healing process? Because I've actually heard you talk about having to grieve toxic relationships.
I believe that, and this is something that I did not knowing that I was doing it, but then I started adding language to it once I became a clinician. But I believe that we have to literally attend the funeral of the people that we exile out of our lives. Like we literally have to mentally map out like our process of like going to their funeral, and or writing out like what it means to have that loss and to no longer have them in our lives, and to completely literally close the casket. Because otherwise, like we're leaving open, even in our own minds, opportunity, them, you know, like being able to contact them. Like there's so much that can happen whenever we're not like closing that chapter and like really like sealing it in, that can be to our detriment. So I actually like, even my clients, like I walk them through the process of like, we're attending this person's funeral.
Is it literally like you wear black and everything?
I don't wear black, but that is genius. So I might.
Literally imagining.
I haven't done that, but I love the imagery. But no, it's really like, you know, like an imagery-based meditation. Like we're going into the funeral home and like, you know, just like really walking us through. And people get really, really emotional because often people also have a lot of love for these people. And so there's a lot of complex emotions and complicated grieving that's happening in that process. But we're processing it. We're going through the motions. We're going through all the emotions, all of it, right? The shame that you experience from having stayed too long, the sadness that you experience from losing the loving parts of that person, the anger that you have at yourself, or, you know, like even becoming toxic at certain points in the relationship yourself, right? Like all of it. We're processing it, but we're processing it by also ending that chapter.
Yeah, God, that's such a complex way to think through the issue, because I could imagine there's more shame in feeling like you miss them, even though you know that they're toxic or a narcissist.
Yeah, and people start to wonder, what about them even, attracted this person? What about them made it so that this person acted the way that they did? And we have to oftentimes remember that, yes, there may have been characteristics that you have, like sensitivities and things like that, that could have made you perhaps in their eyes an easy target, but their behavior is never your fault. It is always reflective of a character flaw in them and never really a character flaw in you.
So you said 2 years. How often do people have that long-term negative impact on their psychology from being with somebody who is constantly manipulating them or being around people like that?
More often than not. And people sometimes, I've actually had one client that was healing for almost 2 decades from a 2-decade relationship. So it took her literally the same amount of time that she was in the relationship to heal from it. And some of the wounds can be so, so deep. But some people, they're able to move on and move into healthy relationships. However, it varies. It varies. But what I have seen in my work is that most people take months to years to actually do the healing work. And it can be really, really heavy, but sometimes necessary to take those years.
Yeah. And actually going back to the funeral analogy, I just love it so much. Do you think in doing that funeral and closing that book, like you said, eliminates the possibility of them trying to come back into your life and love bomb you and hoover you back?
It doesn't eliminate that possibility because that's a behavior that's enacted by them. But what it does is that it allows you to go back into that imagery and say, this person is no longer alive to me. Like, they're not present. There's, when you close a casket and bury a person, like, you don't exhume them and relive your life with them, right? And so that's why the imagery is so powerful, because it allows you to go back into your understanding that that's it. That's the end.
Yeah, it eliminates your possibility of going back to them.
Exactly. And responding to their hoovering efforts or to the manipulative tactics to get you back into their lives.
What about then loneliness? Because I know that can be actually quite a big draw into why people may, again, I'm just going to speak for myself. When I was with my ex-boyfriend, it was the fact that then I felt so lonely once I left him, and then I would replay all the great stuff. It wasn't all the bad stuff I would replay. It was all the amazing moments, that one time that he took me to that one restaurant, on my birthday. How do we prevent ourselves from acting on loneliness as a mechanism to get back into this toxic cycle? Because again, playing devil's advocate, I understand you got to let go, you've got to heal, you've got to get over it. And I've actually heard you also say time doesn't heal all wounds.
No.
So trying to get past it, trying to let go of the past, but sometimes in those moments where they're trying to hoover you back or love bomb you, or you're just missing them, would holding on to the negative serve you?
Well, it is a really important thing to remember. But in addition to that, I would say, remember how you felt in the relationship, and remember how you felt in the moments when this person was gaslighting you, was lying, was manipulating you. Remember that. Don't forget the feeling.
Oh, I love that. I've heard you talk about not making sure that you don't pretend that you don't see the red flags. So in your relationship, once you started to find that out, can you go back and know that, did you see red flags in him that you chose to ignore?
Absolutely. So many. But I didn't choose to ignore them. I didn't know not to ignore them. However, there have been relationships thereafter that, where there have been some red flags, and I'm like, but this person is really cute. So I'm going to try and just, I'm going to try and stick it out, and just maybe that was just a one-time incident, but I really wanted it to work out. But eventually, of course, I saw the pattern, and I knew that I didn't want what I experienced back then. So there have been moments when, I have made the choice to ignore the red flag, but in that incident back when I was in my early 20s engaged, I really didn't know. And a lot of us don't. We just don't have the knowledge that this is something that is happening and can hurt us.
Can I ask you then, in those moments though, you may not have had words to it, but seeing that he used money to either give to his mum or not, depending on what he wanted, wasn't that like a note in your head? It's like, that's kind of a mean thing to do.
Yeah, it was. You know, the thing about even circumstances like that was that when I would talk to him about it, he would actually say things that would convince me otherwise, right? Like, so I would actually think, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Like, because, of course, character assassination, right? Like, he would actually say, like, well, my mother is belligerent with money. And so I would think, oh, okay, well, it makes a lot of sense for her son to withdraw the money and make sure that she doesn't spend it all and blah, 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 right? And that's the thing, is that all of those tactics come back. But when, in retrospect, when I looked at it, I was like, you know what? I never seen her actually, like, be bad with money. And that was years. Like, well, for years, I think I would have at least spotted it once, right? Instead of, you know, not seeing it. And so it was in those moments when I was able to see that, okay, this person was actually creating an idea of his mother for me so that I would actually buy into this awful, like, manipulation that he was engaging in with her.
And going back now, what would you do if that same situation arose? How would you address it with him?
Right now, what I would do is I would actually, like, tell him what I think about his approach with his mother, and at least just to plant a seed. But from my experience, personal and professional, it takes a lot for a person to actually come to an understanding that they can cause harm in this way, and they will rationalize their own behavior. So I can, if I am willing and if I really want this person to change, try and help them to see it and say, like, that's not the way, and that can actually hurt her, and it's manipulative, or it's toxic, or it's not kind at the very least. But if the person is unwilling to see that in themselves, then I'm speaking to air. It's just empty words.
I've actually got a quote of yours. This is, how many times are you willing to forgive the same thing?
Yeah. And we have to really ask ourselves that honest question. Like, if you see that there is a pattern is 2, maybe 3, and you see that it's ongoing and that you're asking for change behavior and the change behavior is not happening, then how many times are you going to be willing to put yourself through the grief of that circumstance? You have to wonder, right? And you also have to wonder, like, do you believe that that is what you're worth? And do you believe that that is what you deserve? And if you don't, then you have to make a decision in reference to it, just to protect yourself and to care for yourself.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now.
How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 Steps to Becoming Confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. I love that question so much. When I heard you say it, it really hit me because I thought, you've forgiven, you kind of move on. Like at least my experience with my husband, being with him for 23 years, it's like you don't hold on. Once you forgive someone, you move on. Because if you are holding on to something over time, it can lead to resentment and contempt. So we have a rule. If you actually forgive me, then you forgive me and we move on. But if you've got that idea or that notion in a relationship that can be toxic, then they can almost use it as a way of being like, oh, no, I'm sorry. And then you keep doing it. So having that question is so beautiful. What other questions can we ask ourselves to really ground us in what's happening?
Well, we have to ask ourselves, what is the kind of relationship that I desire? Oftentimes, we're just looking at the relationship that's in front of us and we're trying to make that relationship fit, right? And so, if we can actually step outside of that relationship and just like dream the dream, what is a relationship that you really desire for yourself? I desire a relationship where the person is able to hug me and give me like these beautiful like affirmations about how they see me. I want a relationship where a person is able to know like that sometimes I forget to fill the gas tank. And it's so wonderful when I can, hop in my car and it's filled and I know that that's love. These are the things that I desire in my relationship. And I see that they're not being reflected in the relationship that I have, and that this person doesn't have the capacity to offer me those things. And then I need to, wonder if this is a relationship for me. But we have to step outside of the relationship that we have and really disconnect from it for a moment and identify the things that are like the beautiful things that we really desire, but also that we need for the long term.
I love the gas thing. That's so sweet, because it really does like show that it's that thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, what that through line is you want someone that's thoughtful.
Yeah.
And it's so true about how we try to mold that person. And do you play poker?
I don't.
Oh, so there's this thing called like pot committed. So you put down money and then you get another round and you put down more money. And then right at the end, you're like, well, I've put down this much money. I may as well keep putting down more money. People do that, I think, a lot in relationships where you're like, well, I've spent 2 years. Well, I've spent 5 years with them. And because you've spent so much time, you don't want to start from scratch. You don't want to start from square one. So you try to see if that person you're with, you can mold them into being the person that you want.
And it's almost always not going to wind up that way. People will change if they desire to change, if that is something that innately like grows out of them, but not because of anybody else. Most often than not, unless they love that person enough and they're like, you know what, things need to be different because I want a healthier partnership. But that still needs to come from them, right? So it's going to be really critical for us to like love the person that we have in front of us. And if we're able to say like, this is a person that I can be with for the next 40 years as they are, and even if they change it, I can move in the direction of the change that they commit to for themselves, and that will still be a person that I love and desire, then I'm staying here, right? But not if you're like going into the relationship saying, well, this is the list of things that I actually want to change in this person so that they can actually like fit the criteria, right? Instead, look for the criteria and look for somebody that fits at least most of your list. And whatever it is that they don't have, because they're going to be human, right? Like, have some grace for that part.
Yeah, so true. I noted to it a little earlier, but I'd like to go a little deeper where you have said time doesn't heal all wounds. So how is that empowering?
Well, time doesn't heal all wounds. It may create a separation from the wound, like help you to actually gain insight about the wound itself. But healing heals wounds. It's the work that you do. It's the work that you put in. It's the tools that you utilize on a daily basis to be better, to grow, to, feel more confident, to feel reconnected to people in ways that are healthy. It's in those experiences, in those healing practices that you're actually going to find the healing, not in just letting time pass.
And what is the harm in just letting the time pass then?
Well, that you're going to replicate the cycles that you've been in. I definitely have been that person, like that the cycles that I saw reflected in that relationship. I realized when I was in another relationship, I was like, oh, I'm being that person. I'm actually replicating that cycle, but from the perspective of the empowered self, the person that is actually using those tactics that I knew would actually work to keep me safe and protected and in a position of power. And had I not actually gone back into myself and said, no, I need to heal this wound. This person hurt me. And I need to find a way to heal that so that I don't inflict pain upon anyone else. They say hurt people, right? And so my hurt self was being reflected in a relationship that could have been really healthy, but it wasn't because I wasn't healed. So we need to work on the wounds so that we don't inflict that pain onto other relationships that we have.
That's so powerful, so powerful. We spoke about earlier about boundaries. So what are the boundaries that people can start to put in now they've heard everything and we've really broken it down? You've done such a beautiful job in that. What are the boundaries now that we can set in order to make sure that we don't fall for the same tricks, if you will?
Well, there are boundaries that we can set, and there are ways that we can set the boundaries.
Ooh, spirit. Take us down.
Yes. So, you know, one boundary that's going to be really essential is not allowing the person to actually diminish your value. Like tell you like, well, you aren't even that pretty anyways, right? Like not allowing a person to actually like say these things to you, not allowing them if you know you don't like it when they curse directly at you, right? Like they can curse, but if not directly at you and call you out of your name, then that should be a boundary that you set and say like this is not allowed in this relationship, right? And the actual how to set the boundary is going to be like really critical in those moments because you're going to have to be firm. You're going to have to use firm language. You're going to have to use firm body posture and like really stand up and like say like, I'm confident in saying this. It's not as to intimidate. It's to just say, I'm confident in what I'm saying. I believe that this boundary is something that I need in my life and I need in this relationship. And I'm setting it and I'm holding on to it, right? And so it's like, it's gentle, but it's firm. It's also going to be really essential to be specific about the boundary and to say exactly what you desire the behavior to be and not get like too heady or wordy about what you desire this person to do. I desire for you to speak to me with respect and like a fellow human and not be unkind in the moments when you feel like you're angry, right? It's firm, it's direct, it's specific. And it's also not going into a full paragraph about what you desire this person to do. So you want to also be firm, be specific, but you want to use as little words as possible to just get the message across and just see how that person responds to the boundary setting.
What's the detriment to over-explaining?
Well, that they can actually use any of the words that you're saying to then create more manipulation. So the more steady that you are in just saying exactly what you desire and not going on a tangent and like, you know, speaking like for 5 minutes, then it actually helps you to not be vulnerable to more manipulation tactics and them actually taking your words and using them against you.
That's beautiful. What other boundaries can we set? That was such a great breakdown.
I'm so glad. So other boundaries are, you know, not allowing for there to be any kind of abuse in the relationship. So saying like you can't abuse me in by way of gaslighting. You can't, you know, like use your body to physically intimidate me. Like all of those are going to be really important to say head on. Like very often we talk about abuse in retrospect. Like we basically say like that happened. That happened to me, right? Versus this is something that cannot happen in this relationship. Like really like getting ahead of it, it's going to be really critical. So that's another, you know, another boundary that's going to be really essential for anybody that's in a relationship where they feel like this person has propensities, if you want to stay, right? It's going to be really critical to say something like that. That's going to be firm.
If you could take a time machine and go back to when you first met your ex, what boundaries would you have set with him?
Wow, I love this question. What boundaries? I believe that I allowed this person to come into my life too soon, too quick. And he moved in within the year, almost not even a year. And
he moved in with you?
With me.
Would you change that?
Absolutely.
Oh, you would?
100%. I would have studied the person more. I would have gotten to know him more. I would have been in more family gatherings and seen the interactions between himself and his mother more. I would have gathered data, is what I call it. So I would have gotten a sense of who this person is in a more profound way before allowing them into the intimacy of my home. Because my home is like my oasis, it's my safe haven. And so I allowed someone into my home that I didn't really study very well or know had these like really toxic characteristics and allowed that to be a part of now my home environment. So I would have completely set that boundary.
Would it have been different if you guys had moved in together in a different place or you moved in with him?
I don't think so because it was a personality thing. But the thing about some people, you know, with these kinds of personality characteristics is that they may have a moment where they're basically showing you their best side, right? And so I think I got a lot of that. And it made it so that even the moments when I saw little things that were like, I don't know how I feel about this, I was able to like just brush those under the rug because I felt like this person overall feels good to me. But then when he entered my home, I think he just like really became his real self.
Matthew Hussey I had on the show, and I remember him saying that not once has anyone said, I'm so glad I moved in quicker. You know, like, it's like, take your time, because then you do get to see if you're actually compatible and if they're right for you, versus, you know, trying to rush into it. If you're going to spend the rest of your life with somebody, then why have the rush? And so that always hit me. What other boundaries would you have set?
I would have actually not been so entangled in his family life, I think. I think that there was a lot of like, because this is also, you know, it just, now I see it all, right? Triangulation and like really kind of like bringing me in as that third party in like family conflict. Like, I think that these were like things that I would have said, like, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to be that person in between yourself and your mother, or in between yourself and any other family member. I can hold space for you and, you know, maybe like affirm you whenever you feel like these relationships don't feel too good for you. But I can't be that person that's actually like creating some sort of a buffer between the anger that you have for her and vice versa. So I think things like that would have been like probably really healthy for me. And again, like sometimes I feel like I look back at her at like 20-something-year-old Mariel, and I think, I wish you had me, the 38-year-old version, to say to you, watch out, or you're going to be okay, or this may not be the person for you. I wish I had, you know, that insight, that wisdom that I hold now to say, this person is manipulative or narcissistic, and they're just going to cause you a lot of drama and chaos in your life. And I don't want that for you. And so that's why, like, now I embody this, you know, like the psychologist version of me, but also just the friend and the sister and the everything that speaks to these things, because I wish that I had this person to tell me, like, don't go in there. It's not safe. It's not good for you. And it's going to leave wounds that you're going to have to work on for years.
Oh, God. How do you break, or not even break, how do you work through that? Because having gone through it yourself and then being a psychologist, you've put all the pieces together, and now you know, and it's like, oh my God, I'm never going to go back there. You've learned all the lessons. Is there a way to help people before they even get there? Because I think a lot of people that are probably watching this episode right now have already been in that relationship, and that's why they've even clicked on this video. And so I'm always trying to think, how do you get people before they have to go through the heartbreak, before they have to go through the 2 years of, you know, mourning and really getting over that toxic relationship?
Well, my hope, truly, like if I were like to dream the dream, is for these very conversations and the knowledge inside of these conversations to be in the school systems. Like, why are girls, why are boys, why are, you know, like all kinds of children like not learning what this is? One, so that they don't become victimized by people that have these qualities. And two, so that they don't become the perpetrators themselves. Like, some people just aren't aware that this is not the way to have healthy relationships. And they start becoming these people. But if they actually have the knowledge of the fact that this can be hurtful for everybody involved, then they may not actually like engage in those kinds of manipulative tactics.
Wow, that really hit me really hard. That's actually so true, in being able to educate so they don't become, and how much of your book, Break the Cycle, how much of that comes from the cycle from the family and what they've seen growing up.
Exactly. But think about the power that we have inside of the educational system, and even like community-based programs that kids are a part of, where they can be informed about these things just as much as they are like in their health class. Like, this should be also a part of the conversation, and they can actually decide to not keep that cycle going when they enter their adult lives.
What does it look like to then look at the cycle that you've been brought up into?
Well, it looks a little bit more detached, right? Because you're able to actually kind of like zoom out of it and really see your family for who they truly are, the individuals that, are reflective of a lot of deep wounds and still love them, right? Like if you wish to love them, but also decide that you're not going to be like them. Decide that the ways in which they, were perpetually like in a state of anger, like that's not going to be your life. So whenever we offer people the opportunity to zoom out and say, wow, these dynamics hurt everybody involved. I don't want that for me. I don't want that for the next generation. I have to do something to change this. Then it offers us an opportunity to actually take ourselves out of that cycle and like become the people, the cycle breakers that then have a different life than the one that we grew up seeing.
And even people that are listening right now, if they've got kids, to think about the fact that their kids are watching them and then their cycle that they're going through.
Yeah, because a lot of the cycles that we engage in relationships are reflective of the modeled behavior of the adults in our lives when we were kids. So when we see the adults in our lives like lash out at each other because there isn't enough money for the rent, and that's the way that they respond to having this like need for money, then that's the way that we're going to start responding to our significant others around money problems. And there is another way, but if we are not aware of the fact that this was learned behavior, this was only one way to manage the financial issues that can surface in a home, and it is an unhealthy way, when we can actually detach from it and look at it in a very kind of objective way, it allows us an opportunity to then make a choice.
You've mentioned money a couple of times, actually. How much of that is a very strong manipulation tactic that people use?
It is one of the most common tactics that people tend to use around partners that actually don't have either as much money or depend on them for all of the money. Like if someone is, a stay-at-home parent, right? Then the money supply is going to come from one person in that family, in that household. And so it's going to be really, really hard for them to feel like they can be independent from this person and actually detach from them and still live probably the same type of lifestyle that they've been living. So it makes the process a lot harder. So money is always like a key factor. And it's also a key factor in a lot of broken relationships.
How do you then work past that? And then I would also assume that would same apply if you're in a partnership or like a parent. If you're, I've heard a lot of people say, well, my parents were going to, help me get through college, but only if I studied X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Well, there's so many different ways in which like money problems can develop in a family unit. I mean, I think the gold standard would be to like have your own way of like making the money and then you wouldn't have to depend on somebody else. But in reality, like many of us just have that dependency, like with children, as you mentioned. So in part, what's going to be really critical is for us to at least map out a plan as to how we can become more financially independent. And if we are already financially independent, identify what we're willing to integrate into the actual relationship, like how much of that money we're willing to like bring into the relationship and how much of it is going to be a safety net for us.
Yeah, because the second you're talking about like a roof over your head and food to eat, like that shit becomes real fast.
Yeah. And like, it all depending on like, what people's money situations are. But the thing about money manipulation is that often what happens is that the manipulator is trying to extract whatever money you have, because that is a source of power. So if you have money, you have one of the power sources that they do not wish for you to have, because you can extract from them more easily. And if they can, like I said, cut the supply, right? Like it makes it so that they're able to then have at least like power over you in that area of life.
God, that's so true. And so you've got the money power, you've got the power of your friends around you who may be saying, hey, he's a little like toxic. What other power supplies are they trying to cut from you?
Usually family is a big one. There are family members that tend to say like, this person like used to be around in all the family functions and now we barely see them. We sometimes can't even connect with them. And so like that's going to be really critical. Sometimes even at work, like they may say like things about your coworkers. Whenever you like bring stories home about the workplace, like they'll say things to isolate you from your coworkers so that you don't have a solid foundation and relationships inside the workplace either. Like it's literally in every area of life.
So it's money, looks like it's people around you, no matter where you are. And confidence, I would assume, is something they definitely trying to take your power.
Yeah, and that's probably the trickiest one, because when a person is able to pummel your self-esteem down to the ground, it makes it so that you feel like you are of no worth or value, and you almost start believing that you are so lucky to have this person that can love you when you're such a shitty person.
You've left me speechless with that one, girl. Holy smokes. The amount of wisdom that you can give and have given is so beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people follow you and find your book?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And drmarielbuque.com is where people can find me and the book, and at Dr. Mariel Buque on all the socials.
If you want to stand up for yourself when someone totally disrespects you, then keep watching.
I listen to my friends sort of stay in marriages, for the kids or whatever. You hear it every single day. Everybody's sort of pushing it down the line. Well, I'm just going to push it 10 yards down the line, 20 yards down the line. Before you know it, you're you're at the touchdown on their end, and you've completely sort of lost the ability to negotiate on your own behalf. I'm like, what? Because you haven't stood up for yourself, right? But it's defining it differently. You can't sign up for this institution unless you're prepared to follow it to the T. And I don't believe that women today or men today want to follow the old institution anymore. So why are we not defining that more clearly? Why aren't we having that discussion? Why can't we have an open marriage or an open relationship as long as we define it? And I'm not saying that's for me personally, because it isn't. Way too jealous of I'm like, but there's plenty of different ways to have a very successful relationship and or marriage, as long as the two people involved can be candid about what their needs are and what their desires are, and not attach shame to it, and say it from get. And then I think the possibilities are endless. But I still think we're sort of stuck in that old school mentality, which inevitably, by the way, has not served anyone. More than 50% of marriages end in divorce. So who is the old institution really serving? Half of the community?
Yeah, I've heard you even say, like, marriage should be like a lease. You have to renew it every 10 years. I was like, would say that.
I still believe that. I mean, my friend Sam and Natasha and I, talked about that. We were at my lake house one night, and we were talking, and it was my anniversary, and I had been through some struggles, and I had written a toast to him, and part of that toast was, I'm renewing the lease, with an option to back out of that lease, right? And this was our anniversary toast, and everybody thought it was hysterical. But there was a lot of truth to it, because the reality is the till death do you part piece backs us into a corner where we can't really say what we need to say, because what we might need to say is that we're not happy and we want out. And that doesn't go along with what we signed up for. So it makes us feel like a failure, and no one wants to feel that way.
Yeah, so true. And I wonder, if you don't mind, you just said, oh, I'm way too jealous for that. That surprises me. I'm like, you seem so damn confident. And so jealousy actually maybe helped me think through this. I think of jealousy as being an insecurity.
It's not, I think when you've been through what I've been through in terms of going outside of the marriage and the betrayal that comes along with that, and the fact that it wasn't a dialogue that, we had prior to, executing
That's very official words.
Yeah. It left me feeling uncomfortable and insecure in my interpersonal relationships with men. And so, you know, that's something that I've consistently have to work on, that I've carried with me. And I think so many women get this. I don't care if you're 20 or 50. You know, at some point you will understand what it means to be betrayed that way. And it affects us on such a deep level, because I think that we connect on such a deep level. When we give our hearts to someone, women typically, we're all in. Mm-hmm. You know, like once we decide to make that commitment, it's like all barriers are gone. Any wall that we might have is gone. And so when that is shattered, that wall comes immediately back up. And then it sort of, as an adult, you just begin to chip away. Okay, I got to get back to where I was so that I can be 100% trusting again, because how am I going to give myself to anybody else ever again if I don't feel like I can break down that wall? And it's a lot of work.
I think actually, as you were talking, the thing that probably trips a lot of us up is, I want to get back to where I was. And the truth is, if you've just had a heartbreaking experience, you're never going to go back to where you were, because you're a different human now. You have had your heart broken. And so I think it actually could be more powerful to go, how do I use this to be better than who I was?
Right, right. And it's definitely been something that I don't think I would take back. As I said, had Jason and I not gone through what we went through, I don't think, it's just another layer of who I am today that I'm kind of proud of. It's like a badge of, you know, I went through war and there's some injuries.
And you got the medal to prove it.
Yeah. But now I feel differently about a lot of things that I couldn't have felt differently about, like this institution of marriage and relationships, how I look at them now and how I want to be and how I aspire to have more, a deeper connection than I had, because I went through it. So for me now, moving forward, that's all it's about. I had to have that experience for someone like me, I think, to learn from it.
So true. And the experience can be beautiful. Obviously, like you said, very heartbreaking. In making the decision to leave, was there any shame around it from other people?
None whatsoever. I had a great support system. Very much so. My family was a great support system. My friends that rallied around me were a great support system. And I would say it took me the better part of 5 years to fully recover. You know, now, full circle moment, my ex-husband is remarried. I've embraced the woman that he's with, who happens to be the woman that he had an affair with. You know, I didn't speak to her or meet her for the first 3 years of their relationship after, you know, we broke up. So I get her. I understand why he chose her. She's quite similar to me in many facets. Yes, she's the younger, newer model. However, all the same things and dreams and beliefs and ideas that I had when I was her age, she has. And I think the work that he had to do, and the reason they probably connected during our marriage, had everything to do with him not feeling big enough and full enough. So we had to find that 28-year-old version of me again to make him feel big enough and important enough, because I had grown and I didn't make him feel big enough anymore, you know? And now he gets it.
Just have to take a moment. Holy smokes. Got so many questions. How?
And it wasn't about age. Like, I've never been like, oh, she's hotter, younger. Like, it's never about any of that.
How do you, was that natural? Because here's the thing, girl, the truth is, 1000%, I would go, oh my God, I'm older. Oh my God, I'm like,
yeah.
I would make it about me. I really would. How did you not make it about you? I think it's freaking beautiful.
I mean, I won't say in the beginning that, I didn't have moments of that. But I really, the second I understood who she was, I went, oh my God, this has everything to do with him. He's meeting me all over again because he required that, because he hadn't done the work. He required what I gave him in the beginning of our relationship when I was 25 all over again, because he lost that pedestal moment of the woman in his life putting him on a consistent pedestal. Now he's had so much growth since then, and I think he acknowledges all of that. But what I don't think he still fully acknowledges is how similar her and I actually are. The 28-year-old version of Tracy is very much, not exactly, but very, very much similarities between the two of us in terms of how we adored him and put him on a pedestal. The pedestal just chipped away until there was not one left. And that left someone who needed that in order to breathe alone. So it makes sense. Like, I get it now. I know why he did what he did. And that makes it a lot easier to forgive him, move on, and understand. But I also have a man in, him in my life that is doing the work to sort of understand that a little bit better. And, we chip away at it, but, we're in a really good place. And to me, that feels really good. I sort of feel like we're not a lot of women that have been through something similar to that can walk away from it and a few years later be having dinner with us as a family with the new wife and myself and the kids, and we all know what went down, and we've recovered from it, and we're stronger because of it. And that's, I think, pretty fucking cool.
Dude, it's so fucking cool because you could have postured.
Oh yeah, I did. In on my own journey back to like a healthy space around it and figuring out what it was really about and doing the work that I've done. Yeah, but it took a minute. It didn't happen overnight.
Right. But how do you then greet her? So number 762 reasons why I freaking love you is you're such a woman's woman. You're like, I have women's backs. I fucking love that about you, girl. So someone who is so supportive of other women, when you see a woman that has an affair with a married man, you don't point the finger at her. You didn't say, oh my God, she's the bitch and you're going to fucking mess with me and my family. You didn't, at least now. I don't know. I'd love to hear if you didn't actually.
I did.
Okay.
I definitely did. I had, I wouldn't, she might say I was vindictive.
But no, if you don't mind sharing, because here's the thing, like, it's really important for me to say this. Some people will stay in that space having this tension, and having this friction for the rest of their lives. The children grow up in a toxic environment. Like,
not healthy.
Exactly. So if you don't mind being very honest and taking us through, if you actually were vindictive, because to your point, you even said, 5 years later, the fact that you guys can all have dinner together is so fucking cool, but I need to know how you got there. Like, the real truth of how the fuck you went from, my husband's had an affair, to now I'm having dinner with a woman.
I don't like feeling unresolved about dysfunction in my life forever. There's a period of time where I can sit with something and go, I just need to sit with this for a minute and really process this and not be reactive, but be fully invested in how I feel about it before I respond. It took me a little longer than I cared to, say as it comes to this marriage and what happened between Jason and I. When it first went down, I was angry. My family was angry. And I would have gone so far as to say he's going to do the same thing to you. I truly believed it, and I was very unhealthily tapped into, like, I was in a drain, and I just kept going down. And in fairness, I think I had to go through that. I had to go through that anger phase. I was vindictive. I was miserably unhappy. It was a bizarre time in my life. And then I took space from it. I didn't see them for a long time. I didn't communicate with, I communicated with my ex-husband as it related to the children, and that was kind of it. And I went, well, this isn't working either for me. I don't like this. I don't like feeling like someone that I spent the better part of half my life with, who I know better than his family, and he knows me intimately in that sense. Like, I can't live in this space of let's have fake communication about our children and keep it moving. And I don't think that he wanted that either. So I started to re-engage, as did he. And there was bumps in the road, you know, because we didn't have boundaries and we had disconnected for a while. So the going from the anger to the disconnect to the re-engagement, that part was challenging because we had to now have new boundaries. We're not married anymore. How do we define that? Like, I have to have respect for your new relationship. How do I get past that? And once I started recognizing that piece of it was missing, and that's why our dynamic was, the re-engagement was not going as well as either of us wanted it to, that's when I finally said, it's time for me to sit down with your partner. And we picked a day, and it was like 5 days. And counting, 4 days, 48 hours, you know, and I was ready. I really wasn't nervous about it at that point. I was really ready to have like a not angry conversation, but a healthy conversation. And we sat together for 3 hours. We had some wine, we had some lunch, and we just talked. And, you know, she obviously took accountability, which I think was nice to hear, but it wasn't necessarily the most important piece of the puzzle. We spoke about how can we move forward in a healthy way and sort of be the defining moment of how we all envision sort of moving forward as a family. And it was something we both agreed we wanted to be proud of. Like, wouldn't that be cool if we could come from a totally fucked up place and then come full circle and spend holidays together, enjoy each other's company, support each other, be there for my children when I can't be as their stepmom, all of these things. And that's what we put into the conversation. I said, it's gonna take a minute. And she agreed. I said, it's not like all of a sudden we're gonna be, you know, under the tree together. And then lo and behold, we were this Christmas. Christmas morning, mimosas and, you know, opening presents over at their house. And I had a great time. But we put that out into the universe as how we sort of envisioned. Wouldn't it be fucking cool if we could redefine what this looks like for every family that's been through what we've been through and felt like it's never going to be healthy again. It's going to be screwed up for these kids forever. I really wanted to see if we could do that. And so we're doing it.
Fuck, girl, that's such an amazing breakdown.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking me through that. And also talk about what you're freaking teaching your daughters. To not be in a relationship if it doesn't work, to not hold on to a grudge, to actually go through a grief, but then be able to come out with beauty and dignity and respect at the end is so fucking powerful. I have too many people in my life, and I don't know if you do, where they've divorced, 30 years later, they still can't be in the same room with each other. And I have like people in my family that are adults and they're the kids and they're like, oh yeah, shit, mum and dad are going to be in the same room today because it's my 40th birthday. And it's like, it's such a unhealthy way to live.
So shitty. And it's so like, again, it goes back to like old traditions and like, oh, obviously if you're going to get divorced, like all bets are off. And why can't we recover properly? Why can't we sort of be in charge of our destiny and what post-divorce looks like? Why can't, and I've always wanted to talk about that, and I've been able to talk about it with a lot more honesty since coming clean about what I really went through and what we both went through as a couple and sort of the recovery of that. Because really the story that was told was I was a workaholic and he couldn't take it anymore, and that was that.
It's way more complicated, and relationships always are.
Oh, yeah.
And you even use the word recovery. And what's interesting is, it wasn't like you were bullshitting recovery. Like, because what I mean is like, let's just do face for the kids. When the kids are around, we play polite. But
that's bullshit.
It's such bullshit.
First of all, kids are the most intuitive creatures on the planet. If you think that you're fooling your kids, you've got it twisted. They see it all. They know everything. They know. You walk in, and I'm terrible at not wearing my emotions on my sleeve. And even when I've done my very best to fake it, like, I am authentic. It like comes out of my pores, right? And for the families out there that feel like they've got their kids fooled, when they wake up in therapy at 20, when you finally do decide to pull the trigger after years of like a bullshit facade, it's going to screw those kids up far more than living authentically, that you're in an unhealthy relationship that's not working for either one of you and you're choosing to leave it. That's how you want your kids to be in their relationships.
1,000%. And even if you don't have kids, how to fully move on if you're holding something to the past. I honestly don't see how you can if you've still got this like wound that you haven't healed. And so in healing it, it's not even the pretend heal, right? Or like the passive aggressiveness, right? You could have been so damn passive aggressive and like do these jabs, right? Like we at the beginning of the interview, you even said about your friend when you do the little jabs. It's like the jabs are the thing that people don't necessarily call you on. The jabs are the things you can probably do for 10 years, right? And everyone will like feel it, but no one will actually say anything. But there's no way I could think of you being able to heal.
That's the thing. I think, you know, with everything, there's like, what are the 5 steps? Like, you have to grieve. You have to, it's okay to be angry. Like, you got, like, the people that are like faking their way through all of those emotions, even as it relates to business, like, it's okay to fail and fall on your face. You should experience that loss as it exactly is and as you're experiencing it. Not push it down the line, because that doesn't serve you. That doesn't allow you to get back up again and feel stronger. I get that question all the time, like, you know, how did you get the way? I said, because I fell on my face so many times because I did this alone. I didn't really have that many people that I related to that I could look up to. So every time I fell on my face, I did cry and I did scream and I did have too many tequilas because I lost the big deal. And I did have a lot of things to say about it. But the truth is, by virtue of experiencing that authentically, then I was able to get back up and move on. And I think divorce and going through a breakup or going through any sort of trauma like that is similar. If you don't deal with the symptoms and experience the emotion of the loss and the anger and everything that goes along with it, then how the hell are you going to be able to move on? Unfortunately, you know, Jason and his wife were on the receiving end of of my process. But it's brought us to where we are today. So I don't think either of them and myself, I don't think any of us would take any of it back.
All right, so in your growth, and maybe you have, and I'd really be curious to talk about this, in your growth, sometimes, like for me, I was the stay-at-home wife, submissive, do things for my husband. And then when I went into business, I went so fucking hardcore the other way that my husband was like, hey, you know, like I kind of miss the sweetness in you.
Right.
And so I realized, oh shit, I actually have to pull back a bit, because what I did is I just went really tough, hardcore, alpha in every aspect of my life. And so because I'd already been married, I had this, you know, dynamic with my husband. He was like, look, I understand why you have to be hard in business, right? Like it's like you're going to war every day. He's like, so I totally get it. But at the same time, what you're doing is you're bringing that harshness back, and you've lost this sweet, nurturing side of you that I loved. And I was like, oh, actually, I totally understand what he means. And I did go too hard. Now with you, in you saying, you were the one that was looking up to your husband on the pedestal. And over time, as you started to get more powerful, more strong, more badass, more ownership of who you are and where you want to go, and you were chipping away at that stool, and now you weren't looking up to him. But earlier you said about your current boyfriend, where you're basically the hard nut, right? I mean, I'll use my own words. You're the one that's the boss, the fucking lady, we're doing this. But also you're looking to him to be like, but hang on a minute, I want you to also handle it. How are you like going to navigate the two of like, you're a fucking badass, but actually you do want people to lead as well?
He naturally is a leader, and I think the difference between the younger generations and the I'm with a 28-year-old.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to actually give context there.
But I think men in his generation are a little bit different. I think they're inspired by women like myself, and I think and that's why, you know, year over year, every single year, you're seeing more and more women in relationships with younger men. So I think there is a different level of confidence that, you know, my husband's generation, ex-husband's generation did not have, where, and again, this comes down to wage gap equality. Like, each generation is experiencing it differently. And obviously, because I'm my age, you know, the way I grew up, it was just a gap, period, the end. I mean, I was raised in a household where my dad was the boss, my mom was also a boss, but at home. And that was very, very clear, and it was very black and white. And I think Eric is a great example of being a part of a generation where, you know, you can look up to a woman at making money and someone that's successful and be like, go for it. And he's always empowered me, and we've been together for 3 years. And I will say, he knows when I'm falling off the ledge.
What do you mean by falling off the ledge?
Like, whether I'm exhausted because I've worked, you know, 4 weeks in a row, 80 or 90-hour weeks, and I've been traveling for work, and I'm coming home depleted with like nothing left to give, are moments where, you know, for example, I came home from a work trip a couple months back, and there was a bath run for me, a glass of wine, and sushi was already at the house, like, waiting. And so I like came in, I got in the tub, and I was like, you know, these are things that, you know, maybe financially he can't, you know, fly me on a private jet to another foreign country and, you know, give me that type of experience. But the simplicity in what he is able to give me from an emotional standpoint and from a giving standpoint was so much more actually about me. And my well-being than it was about, I'm going to be showy and take you here, there, and buy you this handbag or send you on this trip. And, you know, to me, that's, it's good for my soul. It's what I need in my life to feel balanced. I don't know if I would find that in someone my age.
That's fascinating. I don't know if you know this, but one of the big things in relationships and knowing whether it's going to succeed or not is if the partner feels seen or not.
Yeah. I mean, I totally believe that. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. You know, I'm very supportive of his career. He works nonstop. But I think what he brings to my life, and in terms of giving back, and I don't think either of us ever thought that this relationship was going to be as what it was. It's blossomed into something that I think neither of us had anticipated. But out of that has come something so beautiful, and whether or not it's, you know, till death do you part, or however long we make a choice to be together, those moments are so important. Like, he brings me back down to earth and reminds me that I need to sleep. I need to take care of myself. I need to do things that are good for my well-being and my health and my wellness versus, you know, being out in the public eye at the right restaurants and, you know, having the right handbag or any of that shit, which at the end of the day, I see a lot of people, particularly in LA, that are focused on all of those things.
Did you have to face judgment when you started dating him because he was so much younger than you?
Absolutely.
How did you deal with that?
I told him to eat shit. True.
Fuck yeah, you did, girl.
I really did not give a fuck. I just didn't. And
not at all.
No.
Even people close to you.
No.
Fuck yeah.
No, I really didn't, because if you know Eric and the people that know me intimately that have an actual relationship with him and made an effort to really get to know him, know who he is. He's a deep down an incredibly solid human being, sometimes more so than, you know, the men that are my age. And so when you have a foundation like that for like a solid human, the people that I said know us intimately are like, he's a good guy. Now, whether or not you guys end up together forever is not the point. You're in a relationship that's much healthier than the relationships you've been in the past, and we like this for you. You're healthy, you're happy, you've never felt better, you're rested. I'm not going out all the time. I'm more successful, I'm more productive. Like, this is because the man in my life is there supporting me and lifting me up, and also sort of drawing a line saying, I don't really think that you need to, like, we need to go out tonight. Like, I think actually it would be nice if we just spent some time alone. And I'm like, okay, great. You know, it's nice to kind of have that and sort of be brought back down.
How are you able to build trust back again from your last relationship and now being in this new relationship?
Honestly, I that's again a daily sort of stay in your body, try not to go back to the trauma of what that was, and trust that if it does happen again, you'll make the decision that's right for you, and you won't wait 5 years to do it, right? I don't think in relationships we can ever fully trust that someone isn't going to do something outside of the bounds of what your agreement is between the two of you.
How are you going to trust yourself then to hold true to that?
Well, I guess I have to find out, right?
Hopefully you don't, but...
Right? But assuming that I'm presented with that scenario again, there won't be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chances.
Yeah. The reason why I ask is I think that that's something that a lot of people struggle with when they've been cheated on. It's like, wow, I don't trust myself anymore. I don't trust myself that I'm going to be able to spot it, that I'm going to be able to leave again, or that I'm not going to be able to lose myself again in a relationship. I totally
relate to that on every level. I think that any woman or man that's been through that and has been truly betrayed and really caught off guard is a really difficult recovery process to fully trust again. I don't even know if I'm 100% there. I don't know if I ever will be, but I have to try, and I have to give myself to it fully. And the only way to find out if you're capable of it is by virtue of experiencing it.
I heard you say, though, that the judgment always came from women.
Yeah. You know, this is an interesting topic because for so long, you know, being sort of the feminist that I am, I've looked at men as being the reason that we are not, you know, equal on all fronts. And over the course of the last few years, I've done some soul searching on that, and just even looking at the women around me, women across the board on social media channels, and I've recognized that, you know, the competitive nature between women to get to the top is one piece of the puzzle. And then I also think, again, my generation, the generation in front of me and the generation in front of that generation are all still, everybody's behind their little computer on social media, sitting in the dark, judging. I think the younger generations are a little bit different. But I think women typically are our biggest challenge today. I think there's a problem with the way that we all grew up, and it's very difficult to break out of those patterns because we were raised in that. At 47 years old, for me to be who I am every single day and be this feminist, it's like work. I've had to like challenge myself in certain areas and be like, well, why can't? I remember I hired, here's an example. I hired a new agent on my team by the name of Shelby. Shelby I met in Mexico at a 50th birthday party. She's 25 or 20, she was 25 or 26 at the time. Gorgeous model, you know, great on social media and Instagram, but a model nonetheless. And a couple years later, she came to me and wanted to sell real estate. Smart girl, totally has the charisma for it. But you know what was the first thing I did? I started saying, well, she's gonna have to like stop modeling and doing the whole bikini thing on social media to be taken seriously. And then I was like, no, do you know what I'm saying? Like I did the same fucking thing. And by the way, the people that surrounded me in business were like, ooh, you know, she's really gonna have to reel back on, you know, because she couldn't possibly be successful in real estate and wear a bikini. Now, granted, there's a fine line. You're not going to wear a bikini to a listing appointment, but perception is everything. And I said, well, then if I'm going to stand here and say all of the things that I'm saying about being a feminist and I should be able to wear a half top and make, you know, $10 million a year, then I have to also get behind the women underneath me that are doing the same thing and actually elevate them, support them, and make them into the little bosses that they are. And that's exactly what she's doing. I said to her, I even told her, you know, pretty much this story. And I said, there's no reason for you to have two separate accounts. You do you. And, you know, as long as you show up to work and give it 110%, I don't care what perception of you, what the perception of you is online. I care that you know what you're talking about when you walk into the room, that you're connected, and that you are ready to talk to this client about their home and how you can best service them. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And she has that in spades. Now, if she did not have that charisma or that ability to connect, that would be a different story. But she had it. So the one thing that was holding her back was that she was a bikini model. And not just a bikini model, but, you know, but there were a lot of these pictures of her online. Well, that's bullshit. Why can't she be both? And so I had to really second guess myself and remind myself that it doesn't stop right there. And I think that's a big part of where the older generations look at some of, even me. They look at me and say, you can't wear that and be successful at the same time. Well, why the hell not? I'm actually currently doing it. You know, and I think that's part of what my new messaging is. It's talking to women about really supporting each other, because I think that's kind of like, it's kind of bullshit. Like, we say we support each other to a point, but then don't be too feminine. Don't be too comfortable with your own body. You're still a mom. What kind of mom are you if you dress like that? All of these types of comments are completely farcical when it comes to, you know, talking about women online. And it's made me absolutely bananas crazy. So now it's like all I want to focus on and talk about, because we can't point the finger at men forever for holding each other back. We have to elevate each other and be able to be all of the things that we are. And that includes boobs and a butt and a pair of heels, and however we feel like doing our hair and makeup. That's what makes us women. We are completely different than men. And we have to celebrate all of those differences, not just how they fit into being an old version of becoming a feminist.
I love your energy around this. I feel the same, and I don't know how to talk about it, because I have a freaking show called Women of Impact. My whole life is dedicated to supporting women, elevating women, helping women. And yet people sometimes still watch this show, homie, and there's people across the sea, and they just, in the comments, rip the woman apart, or rip me apart. What the hell's up with this woman's hair? Or like, why does she talk in a squeaky voice? I had one guest who was a doctor. She was giving advice on how women can help with their hormones and self-care. Right? So her whole life is dedicated to helping women and their hormones. And the comments is because she wore a crop top.
Story of my life.
Women in the freaking comments. Oh, guys, I read the comments. I read the freaking comments. In the comments, they were like, I can't take this woman seriously because she's showing her belly. How can she, if she wasn't showing her boobs, I would take her advice more seriously. And I'm like, you're watching.
The reason we are totally fucked. Like, that is the bottom line. Because at the end of the day, if we're the ones elevating each other, and call it 50%, and I'm shooting statistics out without any, so 50% of us are really, truly elevating women as a whole. But the other 50% are saying, I'm here to elevate you if you do it the old-fashioned way. But outside, you sound like you're smart and you have your shit together and you've done all the things. And here's the list of all of your accomplishments. I'm here for that, so long as you do it the way I say you should do it, because traditionally that's the way it was done.
Yeah, as long as you do it within my value system.
Right.
And that's where it's like, it's so damn important to keep talking about this sort of thing. And even with the show, I try to have as many diverse types of women as I possibly can, because here's what I'm not saying. Every woman should go and have business and be a badass and crush it in work. No, no, no. What life do you want, and what the hell is holding you back? I got you. That's what this show is about.
Right.
And so even with what we're talking about today, it's been about relationships, it's been about business, it's been about friendships. But the whole point is, how the hell, Tracy Tutor, do you stand up and be a freaking like strong woman on a daily basis when you're getting all this stuff coming at you? Whether this stuff is other women hating on you, whether it's, you know, you finding out that your husband's cheated on you, whatever that stuff is, how the hell do you keep showing up? Because a lot of women don't. You've just shared over an hour, God knows how long, of all the tactics and tips that you do. That's what I want to keep focusing on, right? Hey, you at home, stop writing a comment about, oh my God, I can't believe she dates someone that's 20 years younger. Why do you care? And it's so damn disheartening, girl. It's so damn disheartening to think that because of our own belief system, if it doesn't align with what you know, if what you do doesn't align with my belief system, then I'm only going to tear you down. Why not freaking support?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I find is it only inspires me to keep doing it.
The haters on you inspires you.
It only inspires me to keep having the dialogue, keep dressing the way I want to dress, whether that's in a crop top, which I get a lot of shit for, or you know, wearing a skirt that's, whatever that looks like to the women. If I keep doing it, they will eventually, as long as I'm still speaking from the same mindset, as long as I'm still successful, as long as my messaging is no different, eventually they'll kind of go, okay, well, I guess she's as smart as I thought she was, and I guess the top that she's wearing is sort of irrelevant, isn't it? And that's sort of my mission, to continue to, if I stop doing what I'm doing, then that dialogue isn't had until the next woman that comes along that maybe doesn't have the balls to stand up for themselves quite yet because they're a little bit younger. And so then you're always conforming. And if we don't stand up and not conform to what these old ideals were, then we're never going to actually change the whole system. And so to me, it's always going to be continue, like, y'all inspire me. The more you talk shit, the more I'm going to continue to be exactly who I am, say exactly what I'm thinking all of the time, and just be 100% authentic. And it seems to be working. So,
fuck yeah, girl. And I don't want to presume, but I do feel like sometimes a lot of the hate just comes from insecurity, right? It's like, I wish I had the confidence to dress like that. I wish I had the confidence to just say, yeah, I'm divorced and I'm going to go after a guy who's 20 years younger than me. Like, and so because maybe people don't have the confidence, the flip side is to actually say why it's wrong, because now you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that, right? Like, you know, social media trolls, it's, you know, they're all insecure. And that's a very easy way to compartmentalize them, right? And so that we can move on with our day. But the truth is, social media is how people communicate. It is a big part of how we're all out there and having success that we're having. And if we don't continue to have the dialogue on how to shift that narrative, then we're going to continue to have sort of these internet trolls that actually are valued. There's value there. There's a reason these different blogs and social media accounts are created. There's a reason bots are, you know, these things are successful because people buy into it. And what we don't want to see is people buying into it anymore. So in my opinion, in order to stop that bullshit, we have to keep stepping up, keep stepping out of our comfort zones, continue to battle this in an effective way so that, you know, we change the actual dynamic. We shift their opinion. And more often than not, when I do have a dialogue with a troll for whatever reason, not every time, but more often than not, they'll say, wow, I just never really thought that you would actually respond to this. Sorry. And I'm not emotionally affected by it either way, but it's more of a shift of, I'd rather connect with you and explain to you that the reason I will continue to do this is so that I can shift your mindset about it. I'm not here to upset you. I'm here to shift your mindset that I can be many, many things. And those things include sexiness, funny, and really fucking smart at the same time. Like, why can't we have all three? Why, if you're smart and successful as a woman in business, do you have to be one note? I'm over it.
Where's that fine line between helping them, right? Like, actually, I think that if I say this, maybe I'm opening a door that you haven't seen before, and defending yourself.
I mean, I think in some cases, you know, when it's tapped into my relationship with my children, I definitely have a little bit of a different messaging surrounding that. But my kids are also old enough to have their own minds on social media. And like I said, they're little feminists in the making. And so they can speak quite eloquently and in a way that has worked, I think, wonders. Because obviously I can also not be a good mom because I work too hard and I dress too sexy. So therefore, I'm setting a bad example for my girls. Both my girls are unbelievably successful in their own right. They're good kids. They get good grades. They're on an incredible path of their own, and they're thriving. And they'll chime in when they feel like it on their own. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've read some of Juliet's responses on social media to different people, and I'm blown away with what she's been able to say. And I think, you know, so are my followers, candidly. Like, wow, this little 17-year-old has quite a bit to say and is really effective. I mean, God help everyone when she's 25. You know what I mean?
She learned the lessons from her mum.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, it's like really having the skills to defend yourself in certain moments, or having the skill to let something roll off your back. Like, this such, and this is really, you know, beautiful full circle where we started from. I find it even now sometimes difficult for myself. And a lot of it, that's why I'm actually leaning in a lot into health. Because I'm like, if I'm just tired, if I haven't eaten, if I'm overwhelmed, I'm way less likely to let something roll off my back and then like defend myself if someone comes at me, like, come at me, bro.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm more likely to do that on days that I'm not feeling great and exhausted versus on days that I'm feeling confident because I've had great sleep, I've had a great day, whatever. Like, in those moments, I'm more likely to let it roll off my back.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Because this has now become more recently a mission of mine, I'm conscious of that. So despite how I'm feeling that day, I'll really try to shift. I'm beginning a shift in how I react to these types of comments, because my bigger goal is to sort of have women realize that we're holding ourselves back by doing this to each other. We should be our biggest advocates, not the reason that we're still not there.
Yeah, and even in what you were just saying, it's like, if someone said, I can't take you seriously because you wear heels and you wear low-cut tops, versus you can't be a good mum because you wear heels and low-cut tops. I assume that the impact it has on you, to your point of like, when it's to my kids, obviously they're older now, but when they were younger, did you have more of that like protection? Like, okay, now you've actually triggered the thing inside me that's not gonna, I can't let this roll off my back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're my babies, and you know, I feel very responsible along with Jason for the women that they're becoming. And you know, when your kids become teenagers, it's like a whole different world. Like, you're lucky enough to be graced by their presence. They have ideas of their own. They have their own thoughts. You know, you're like old, and they have their own vision of how they want their life to be. Now, I could either take that and be offended by it, but honestly, I embrace that in them. And so when they were younger, these types of comments would get at me a little bit more. But now, because they follow me so closely in my business, and really what I am all about is women empowering other women, they're like my little empowerment chicks. So Scarlett a little bit less so, and again, she's only 14, but Juliet's like 17 going on like 30. She's just like, listen, here's how I'm gonna put it to you, ladies. And she'll, you know, chime in on her own. And that sort of affirms that, without me having to say it, that the little women that I've raised really well. And they're making good decisions. They know how to speak on behalf of themselves. They know how to elevate themselves. and they know how to be heard. And that to me is the job speaks for itself. I don't have to defend it.
I love that, but because I don't have children, like the mama bear effect is very fascinating to me, because every time I hear about pretty much any badass, powerful woman, it's always just like, well, I kind of let things slide off my back if people are insulting me, if people are doing this to me. Like, we always kind of let the things go when it's happening to you. But when it happens to someone in your life or someone you really care about, like, I can't even remember the stats. I'm going to pull something out of my ass right now, but it's something like 70% of women are more likely to fight for their colleagues' pay raise than their own pay raise. Because you're more likely as a woman to advocate for someone else over yourself. What would you suggest if you weren't a mother of, like, or in fact anybody, of how we start to actually advocate for ourselves first?
Right. I mean, it's so true. I was watching this Korean new show. You guys got to say it. It's called Glory, and it's about it's obviously in South Korea, but it's about a young girl who was bullied by some high school students, and she spends the better part of 20 years coming back for revenge. And it's really good. But there's this instinctual thing, I think, that happens with women, and I don't know, maybe not for every woman, but for me, since I was a kid, if there is an underdog, I am their protector. If there is someone that isn't getting paid equally, then I'm coming to bat for them. Like, I've just always been that way, and I used to attribute it to just being a woman, and that's part of just like our makeup and who we are, but I definitely have not advocated for myself early enough as a young, you know, entrepreneur coming into business. It took me until now to finally start beginning to, you know, advocate for myself in the last, call it 8 years of my career. But the first 15 years of my career, I spent advocating for everyone else. And that's just the truth. And so, you know, again, the reason why I wrote the book, and you and I had talked about this before, I really wanted young women to connect to it, because I didn't have that book or that mentor that I understood or that I related to, because, you know, they said fuck every so often. I was like, oh, they make mistakes. They're not just polished 100% of the time. They speak with authenticity. I didn't really have anyone to look up to growing up. So I fell on my face 150 times and had to figure out how to get back up and become successful. I don't want the 20-somethings of the world to have to go through what I went through. Like, we can cut that in half by, you know, talking to each other, supporting each other, advocating for each other and for ourselves, starting, you know, outside of college or even outside of high school, rather than when you're 38.
If you want to learn how to set boundaries and protect yourself from toxic people, then click here right now.
It does take a lot of strength and certainly courage to show up as your boundaried self. It takes strength and courage to no longer allow the gaslighting.